when I was racing bikes, one of my mentors, we were, riding up this mountain, and he's like, get used to this discomfort, because this is when the difference in the races are made between when you will win and when you'll get dropped and you'll be at the back. So if you can maintain your ability to make good decisions and like stick with your race plan, it's like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Mike Tyson.
And it was almost a cue for me. I was like, oh, I feel that terrible feeling of near exhaustion. This means I'm about to win. And I would go, and I was like, this is the time to attack. And I would go and I would win the race. And I was like, oh, it works so well. It's amazing.
There goes a sight from my soul.
Welcome to the Inspired Evolution. It is a treat in time to be here today. We have with us Derek Loudermilk. Derek, how are you there, brother?
It's good to be here.
It is such a pleasure to have you here. For those tuning in to Derek for the first time, we have an extreme biologist in there. We also have a quantum business coach, and we have a podcaster. Check out the Derek Loudermilk Show. But we also have a time traveler. So I guess my first question, Derek, is going to be, has this podcast already happened and is it amazing?
Yeah, you got it. All your shows are amazing.
So I wanted to sort of start there because I'll be the first to put my hand up, and there's there was a skeptic in me which goes, time travel, like I don't really understand what's going on there. So where did quantum business coaching, I get it. Extreme biologist, I want to know more. Your podcast is dope, but the time traveling piece has me a bit like, huh? Is it? So tell me a little bit about where did time traveling drop in for you, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so according to physics and according to various channeled information, channeled texts, we have a pretty good idea that we perceive time linearly here on Earth in 3 dimensions, but that's not the absolute reality, that in higher dimensions, you can sort of perceive all points of time simultaneously. And so really we're viewing time from a particular perspective. And so my foray into this was actually like, well, what would it be like to have to experience time just from a different perspective that allowed me to either perceive different points in time or to experience, speeding up or slowing down time. And this comes from what a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, which is I don't feel like I have enough time. I have kids and I'm trying to run a business and do these other things.
I can totally relate to that statement, but I have to admit, I never took that statement and said, okay, maybe I can, manipulate the 3D by jumping a dimension to try and work with, okay, go on. So tell us more.
Yeah. So really it's just a productivity hack.
Getting into dimensional is a productivity hack. All right. Tell me more.
And so I was thinking about, okay, when early people started to keep track of time, it was to have some sort of control or dominion over it, to allow them to have precision in their schedules or precision when they're talking about their experiences. And so these early megalithic structures like Stonehenge or the pyramids, they're precisely oriented in space, and they're also used as clocks to keep track of time. So you're essentially establishing space-time for yourself as a construct, which then allows you to have experiences within space and time. It's kind of like part of being here on Earth. This is like this. We all agree that time is going to move at this type of flow, but we know from relativity that changes as soon as you go into space or as soon as you move faster or slower.
One of my favorite, no, I can't even say it's one of my favorites. Probably my favorite. Oh, it's up there with The Matrix. Interstellar is just like, I love that movie. Like, it's just incredible because it helps, I guess, visually represent some of the more nebulous understandings around gravity, time, space, how, yeah, just, they ended up in different planets which had greater gravitational pulls, and they aged. 1 year for them was like 10 years back in the spaceship for the other people, and then you start to realize that, it's a real dance, and it is, time can be relative, which I found really interestingly unpacked in that movie. So yeah, I think it's incredible to consider that time is relative. One of the things that I find also, you're saying, I think you're alluding to it now, is the consensus time. Like, we sort of we develop time as a, sorry, I'm obviously researching your work, that there's a consensus that we went, okay, so this is 12, this is 1, and then we're all going to sort of meet at 1 and meet at 2, and there was a necessity for that? Or is that just something that, like, can you tell us a little bit about consensus time? And then please, sorry, I interrupted what you were.
Yeah, well, there's also a theory that I'm working with is that perhaps gravity and consensus, collective consensus, may be linked, which is to say there's a gravity to what we agree is reality collectively, and that so they've shown that astronauts doing psychic experiments have greater success when they leave Earth. So there's this like relationship with these superhuman abilities that once you get outside of the gravitational sphere of the collective consciousness seem to be enhanced. So it's almost like there's a and it's like you've experienced this. If 10 people tell you can't do something, and then you're like, oh well, maybe I can't do it, and it starts to affect your
becomes
beliefs.
A self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah.
So there's probably more evidence out there that I can start piecing together, but that's an interesting concept. And so it's like, if you're adept at ignoring what people are trying to, any narrative or belief structure that someone is trying to impose on you, then you have perhaps a lot more freedom, both in time, but also in ability to make things happen in a way as well.
So the query that emerges from me, and I'm probably playing devil's advocate for the skeptic listener here, is, but we are 3D beings, right? So as much as like time and gravity, because what I'm hearing in the subtext of what we're discussing is that potentially a lot of our relationship with time, our perspective on the way the world is even structured, is socially, collectively informed, and then reinforced and enhanced, and then we live into that paradigm, and then that obviously builds in beliefs, limiting beliefs, supporting beliefs, empowering beliefs. And we develop structures, mental models based on the soup that we swim in, social soup that we swim in. Let's call it that. Now, but then like I can feel that there's almost like a, would it be the case, I guess the question goes, would it be the case that if we didn't have that social structure, that potentially, what would our relationship with time look like? And what would our relationship with some of these things look like? Wouldn't we still not be 3D beings bound to time? Like,
well, you could still, I think it's possible to still have social structures and have a society that would operate with a different view of time. I think the relationships could be the same, but that's kind of too hard for me to really grasp. What that would be like. But so maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about how I started playing with this.
Yeah, and how you time travel. That'd be great. Can people try this out?
Yeah, it's actually really, really easy. So like the first step is like get rid of the influence of time by stopping paying attention to the clocks. So everybody's carrying a phone around them, and their watches and everything. Watches came into popularity wristwatches came into popularity during World War I, when it was like pilots started wearing them because they needed to coordinate military
attack.
maneuvers.
Yeah.
And so they had to synchronize that. And then it was sort of like ladies' fashion started wearing watches in the 20s roughly, but then sort of pocket watches were around maybe for 50 years before that.
Mhm.
But it wasn't really a thing. People really started synchronizing time during these wars. So it's almost time precision is linked with the military industrial complex, which
Wartime,
how much would you like to be
right.
intertwined with that?
Mm.
But if you can extricate yourself from checking your watch, then your experience is sort of free and floating there. And if you start from your experience, which is, I have enough time, I'm gonna make it to my next appointment on time, I'm gonna complete what I need to on time, or I'm gonna be in the right place at the right time, and you sort of start from embodying that. What I've noticed is that, so I did this with, picking my kids up from school on time without looking at my clock, or making sure that I'm home in time for dinner, but still fitting in a 2-hour workout at the gym when I have theoretically, only an hour to do it. And various other, and so I started pushing the limits of like, okay, can I go all day and be on time all day without ever looking at a clock? And what I've noticed is that I'm actually more on time than people who presumably are looking at their clocks.
How did you verify that? And then did you have more or less anxiety without the clock? Because sometimes I know when I'm like looking at the clock, trying to go like, okay, I got to be there at 1, and it's like 12:30, and I'm going to smash out all these emails, and it's like,
and that's what's keeping you right. That's what's keeping you feeling like on the back foot, right? Because time is master over you in a way. And I just wanted to experience sort of dominion over my own,
and just that freedom. So there was less anxiety. And so how did you, sorry, please.
There is anxiety that comes up because you have to remind yourself, like I had to remind myself to trust and have faith. And if I was late, it was going to, like, whatever, I'd be late and apologize, but it never happened.
That's incredible. So how did you know that you weren't late? Because you still didn't check the clock when you got to where you were going. You were just, went to your appointment and you just happened.
Well, so here's the example with picking up my kid from school. They let the kids out at, whatever, 3:30, but the kids have to walk, because we were doing outside pickup. So the kids had to walk out from their classroom and you pick them up sort of on the corner. And some parents arrive early and wait in their cars for the kids to come out, so they're not on time. And some parents arrive late because the kids are already out there, and then they pull up, and so the kids are waiting for them. But for me, when I tried it, it was like we both walked out and met at the exact same point. So maybe it was like 3:32 or 3:29, but it was just that we both arrived together at the right time.
Because I do find, for me, sometimes it happens with sleep. Like I will forget to set an alarm, and then my body wakes me up at like just the right time for me to engage with exactly what I need to. And I'm like I don't normally get up at, let's just say I'm doing a podcast with someone in the US like yourself. I don't normally get up at 5 a.m. and like, how did my body just wake up at 5 a.m.? And it's like, it does buzz me out a little bit when that happens. So you're saying, do you think it's an innate intelligence or relationship that we have with time? Or is it, you mentioned the word perspective, is it just that the consensus time is actually more illusionary than we think? Like what would you call it?
Well, I've noticed that so if you have thoughts and emotional states that are really dense in 3D, like anxiety or despair or fear or whatever it might be, it's nearly impossible. So you kind of have to have an elevated perspective, which is like joy, gratitude, peace, and like bliss, essentially, to be able to move into a perspective where that's available.
Can you explain that further? So moving into something like gratitude, let's take gratitude as an example. Yeah. So you need to be
Yeah,
in
there's
gratitude for yourself to be able to harness the power of just being okay with the way time is moving. Sorry, can you explain that a little bit better?
so there's something called the Dawkins scale of consciousness, which sort of
Yeah.
places on a frequency map,
Yeah.
different
Power versus force. Yeah.
emotions. Yeah. And so um, it's much easier to access this experience
Hmm.
of control over time from the higher levels,
Ah.
which include those emotions.
Right. So when you're in the more stuck sort of emotions, you're more likely to be driven by time. But when you're in more elevated emotions, you feel more flow, ease, surrender around time, and you're more likely to have these more. Yeah, it sounds like
Yeah.
it's a wellspring, like a perspective that provides a wellspring of like synchronicity, flow, surrender is like really a big one. I can feel calling in there. I guess one of the questions that leads me into is, oh, there's two, but I think I'll take the big one first. Is you've done a lot of traveling, mate. Like you've been a nomad. You've been to like how many? Like over 45 countries. You've lived in 15 different countries, and your conversation about living is yeah, I thought it was really interesting the way you described living. It was like I only really consider myself having lived in a country if I know my local grocery store attendant and then they know me, right? So
Yeah.
that takes a minute to develop that relationship. It's not just like you've been there for like 2 days and you consider yourself live there. But I guess the low hanging fruit is you've traveled quite a bit. Two ways I could ask this question, but the first one is you've traveled and you've had a lot of. I think is it like you did this questing for like 100 like what's the word like 100 different like not existential experiences, but do you know what I mean? Like you went questing. Do you know what I'm referring to in there? Sorry,
Yeah.
I lost the
Yeah.
word.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the middle of this quest.
Yeah, can you tell
But
us a
I,
little bit about this?
but
Yeah.
I often operate in the framework of a quest, which is sort of a mythical story type, way of living. It's like the hero's journey, but
Hmm.
it gives you a clear framework for exploration.
Hmm.
So, pilgrimage is a type of quest. I had a quest to go to every US state. There's 50 states before I turned 30. So it kind of is like, oh, I could go back again to a place that I love, or it kind of forces me to go to a new place that I might not have considered.
Hmm.
And so it gives just a little framework for exploring. And I'm in the middle of a quest to do 100 different metaphysical experiments. And
There we
what I
go.
mean by that, is like healing modalities, different spiritual teachings that have practices that you can learn,
Mm.
and just to place myself in that experience.
Mhm.
So it could be as simple as when I'm traveling and there's a shaman and I go get a healing and that's it,
Mhm.
right? Or it could turn into a daily practice that stays with me for years, as is the case with practicing dream time and lucid dreaming, and also recently chanting and various other practices and techniques. And some of it's very physical, like you're manipulating the physical body to create a state change, which influences your consciousness, your emotions in some way. And some of it's much more out there, right? You're
Mm.
like going away from your physical self in a sense.
Can you tell us about, because that was going to be one of my questions, what was one of the ones that you've had so far? I know you're in the middle of this quest that was like just surprised you in terms of how out there you got, because your background is like, I know you're quite well grounded in biology and science. So like, going on these 100 metaphysical quests, yeah, like what's one example of something where you're just like, where have I ended up? What am I doing here?
Yeah. So, I mean, so sometimes I like to have the experience first and then research it afterwards. And
Mhm.
sometimes I research it, read a lot of scientific literature and then think, oh, that would be a good thing to go and try.
Right.
Um, I mean, for sure, psychedelics, there's no way to know what it's like until you try ayahuasca or psilocybin or something. Um, but recently, let me tell you this story because this is really impactful for me recently.
Mm.
My grandfather is what I would say like very conservative Christian, and he always wanted me to, read the Bible and go to church with him, and I never really connected with his approach, but I always wanted to connect with him and his love for Jesus. And I've come to understand Jesus as a pretty amazing person that probably knew a lot of these metaphysical techniques. But I was searching for a way. I was like, how can I take what I know now about spirituality and metaphysics and bridge this disconnect that I felt with him for many years? And so I thought, I'm gonna channel an angel, and I'm gonna like find some way to like access angelic consciousness and get a message for my grandfather that will help him like feel more connected to me. So I did this like 2 weeks ago. And this is the thing I'm learning is how to channel, which is basically brainwave state dependent.
Okay.
You just get yourself into a theta state.
Okay, cool. Yep.
Which can be done through like a guided audio at home for anybody really, or it can be practiced with brainwave training techniques. And it's what some people would consider to be astral traveling, where you sort of project your consciousness out and can go exploring anywhere in the universe, or remote viewing maybe is another term. But essentially I was flying around the solar system in my imagination, and I went to the sun, and there is an angel, Archangel Raphael, in the sun. He was like living in the middle of the sun. Right. And I was like, do you have a message for me that I can use for this objective that I'm trying to connect with my grandfather? And it was like a very clear image of my grandfather walking across water like Jesus. And I was like, whoa, okay, cool. And it was like, he wasn't actually walking across water. There was these columns of stone that he was standing on, but they were just below the surface of the water. And then every time he took a step, a new column of stone would sort of rise up to meet him.
Appear, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it wasn't there before he decided to take the next step. And he was met, sort of like his faith was met by support, And so I told him this. I said, hey, listen, I got a message from an archangel for you. And he was like, well, all right. It's clearly skeptical.
So you actually called him up in the physical and called him up. So this happened
I called him up.
In your imagination.
So I called him up.
Like you took yourself on this experiment to the sun and you met the angel. You had the vision. You downloaded that as a message. And okay, cool. And then you called up your granddad.
So it could have gone, like I was preparing for him to be like, I don't buy into that. Nobody can talk to angels. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because usually it's like his way
or the highway. Yeah.
But I was like, I had this vision of you walking across water, and I just wanted to share it with you. Does that mean anything to you? And he's like, well, I don't know. And he's like, let me tell you the story of when Jesus walked on water. I was like, okay, I don't really know the story. The story of Jesus walking on water is he was on shore doing something, and the rest of the disciples went on a boat. And then he was like, oh, let me catch up with you. And he just like went out. Instead of having them row back to shore, he just walked out to them on the boat. But Peter hopped into the water and was walking out to meet Jesus, and he was walking on the water too. And I didn't know this, that Peter also walked on the water. And Jesus was like, oh, this is like great. You're walking on water too. Like we're all in this together. And Peter was like, ooh, I'm not you. I'm not as incredible as you are. And then his faith went away from him. He started second guessing himself, and he sunk. And so Jesus pulled him out and was like, don't worry, I got you.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting, right? And so in the vision, my grandfather was walking on the water. He was already doing it. And he was like, I don't see myself as like Peter or Jesus. And I was like, but this vision is telling you that you already have the faith, that there's something that you've been doing, which has allowed you to progress to this point where you're already out there in the water. And so he was like, wow, I really, I'm he's 90, 95 or whatever. He's like, okay, I'm going to go pray about that. But it was, to me, whether or not anything happens from that, the fact that he is open to that and was like willing to let it land for him, it just
well, following all the way
for
back
me.
the thread back to your original intention as well, which was to like connect, right, with you.
Yeah.
And then you guys are connecting through the power of this vision that you've had, and then been able to bring it to him, and he's been able to absorb it, and then you guys have been able to unpack it together. You're connecting, right? So that's actually quite profound in and of itself, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, it worked out exactly how I was hoping, I think. Just a very roundabout way of doing it, right? I could have just sat down with them too.
Yeah, incredible. What is thank you for sharing that. What is one of the things in your quest for these 100 different metaphysical experiments all over the world? What's one that's was just the most, I don't know, this is a weird question, but like, what was the most obvious, which was just like, I have to try that and it's going to be amazing, and it has been amazing? Like, which one was just like the no-brainer?
That I tried and was amazing. Well, something that came surprisingly easily, which was super exciting, was I had a woman on my show, and we became friends, and she works with animals, animal communication. She works with Olympic horse athletes and animals in movies, so she can communicate with animals and get them to act in a movie set the way that she wants them to, for example. But she can also diagnose them. She can read them and sort of fully diagnose their medical problems in a way that she's 100% accurate, like confirmed by veterinary doctors. And the hospitals will bring her in to do these diagnoses for their, $1 million horses when they can't figure out their conventional means. And so she's really amazing at what she does. People fly her around the world to meet their horse.
Support.
Yeah. And she was like, I can teach you telepathy in 5 minutes. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine, do it,
please.
And so we just hopped on an Instagram live, and she just took me through this pretty simple guided meditation, which is kind of just about opening up your senses in a way. And then she was like, okay, here's a horse. She put a picture up of the horse, and she was like, what's wrong with it? What's your diagnosis? She's like, I know this horse. I've already worked with it. I know the complete medical history. She's like, you just tell me what's wrong with it. And I would go through it, and I was like, I think he has a pinched nerve in his neck, and his left hoof is feeling awkward. And this one really likes competing. He likes the crowds. He's very gregarious. And I was like 99% accurate.
Whoa.
First try through. And I was like, so really it was just in the method of her getting me into that state.
Yeah.
And just sort of, also she was like, okay, what about other parts of his body? Like, can you look here? And so I would look there. Okay, interesting. And she would try to trick me too. She was like, does he get headaches? And I was like, no. She's like, you're right. Okay, good. So she would do like negative controls as well to make sure I wasn't picking up on.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So telepathy was accessible. So a big part of what I'm hearing in the subcurrent to a lot of this is, limiting beliefs and being able to challenge the structure of beliefs that that are imposed on us. I guess the question that I have to ask you today is, as a time traveler, as someone that's invested in biology, someone that has an incredible podcast, and then someone that's focused on quantum business coaching, I think, and someone that's traveled so widely, I guess there is the low-hanging fruit question of, what does time well spent alive here on Earth mean to you? What does time well spent mean to you?
Yeah, and I am always trying to optimize that. And for me, it means having a lot of novelty. Novelty. The quests is a great framework for that.
Yeah.
But also in relationship with other people, whatever activity you're doing, if you're getting to the edge of how you express yourself, how you understand how you feel, and there's a cutting edge for how willing you are to speak what's real for you, or how willing you are to try to understand someone else. So there's like physical novelty. I'm going to try a new physical activity like surfing or archery or whatever it might be. But then the novelty within relationship with other people, whether it's like we're dancing, and sometimes it's physical and relational together, right? Like we're going to dance together, and that makes me feel exhilarated and really uncomfortable because my body doesn't know what to do. So there's so much, but I'm always moving towards places where I am a beginner, to sort of re-experience that, what it's like to be off balance, to be having brand new neural pathways being formed. And it's also very gratifying for me to get good, to see improvement, because when you're a beginner, if you do something for a month, like you're going to see
the leaps are quite drastic.
Yeah. So that's great for me too.
I love that, but it's also, I find it's interesting to hear you put it that way, because I do wonder sometimes, like, because coaching a lot of different people, I think people have a very different propensity for, amongst different individuals, for the beginner mindset. Like some people are very willing to like, yep, I can't wait to suck at something new because, it just means like I'm going to get really good really fast, whereas some people are much more like, oh, I don't really want to try that because when I'm going to try it, I'm going to not be very good at it. And then I don't like not being very good at things. And they're not willing to go through that not being very good at something phase to get good at something, even though logic would tell you that everything you are good at, you would have been not good at some point, right? Do you find that with your coaching and the people you work with as well, that different people have different propensities for novelty, which you've described?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would expect a standard curve of how people approach that naturally, but there's also you can shift that if you want to be better at acquiring skills, if you want to learn more quickly, which is in and of itself a sort of a meta skill, which enables, like, if you're good at learning, then it opens up, right? As the world changes, as you shift careers, right? You might as well learn stuff really fast, because then you'll be more valuable and be able to contribute more if you need to. But so one of the keys to learning fast is to really embrace what it feels like to be in that type of beginner discomfort, which is to say, like, make an association for yourself where you feel really good when you're not feeling good. That is to say, you're getting a reward for it, rather than like, oh, it's just uncomfortable, which I think probably people just want to avoid the discomfort of it. But if you can supersede that with a reward, by understanding how that's getting you closer to something, then I think that's one little sort of hack for that.
Can you tell us more about that specific hack? Because I think I can also draw parallels to when I was researching your work. You mentioned a little bit about, let's say we were traveling from one city to another, and now I'm sort of going back to like the time traveling conversation. It was like, you've got an 8-hour drive, but you can sort of assume the state of what it's like for when you're arriving in a certain place, and time will like fold in on itself quicker because you're more attached to what it feels like to be arriving rather than what it feels like to be on this arduous journey. And I heard something similar in there. It's like, tune into the state of how it feels of actually accomplishing, being a novice, and actually feel like rewarding yourself positively for that, because it's actually, it feels really good to be cracking open new little things along this journey. Can we talk a little bit about state and why that is? Like, what is your relationship with state, and is that a real fundamental piece for you, or is it just I've just picked a couple of synchronous moments and just pair them together?
No, that's you've done your research. I feel like that's something I haven't really talked about much, is the like trying to get there faster, just kind of warp yourself there by being there already in your state, which I've had limited success with, but other people I know do it all the time, and it's like,
right,
something that I would love to harness better. But Yeah, when I was racing bikes, one of my mentors, we were, riding up this mountain, and at the limit, right? Your blood is boiling and your focus is narrowing, and there's you can only perceive just a little bit of the road in front of you. And he's like, get used to this discomfort, because this is when the difference in the races are made between when you will win and when you'll get dropped and you'll be at the back. So if you can maintain your ability to make good decisions and like stick with your race plan. It's like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Mike Tyson.
Right? If you can deal well when you're getting punched in the face, right? If you can maintain your internal state, then you have a great chance of success. And I really took that to heart. So I would always, when I was practicing, and I was quite young, just out of college, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to spend as much time getting used to this as I can. And it worked. It was unbelievable. It was like, and it was almost a cue for me. I was like, oh, I feel that terrible feeling of near exhaustion. This means I'm about to win. And I would go, and I was like, this is the time to attack. And I would go and I would win the race. And I was like, oh, it works so well. It's amazing.
Yeah, incredible. So is it more mental, or is it more emotional? Is it physical? Is it a combination of all the above? What is the state like that? Because you're referring to state, and state for me could be like posture. It can be sort of how I feel inside. It can also be like you described. It's like, like the mental thought process of, oh man, this is getting hard. And it's like, great, I'm going to win. Or this is getting hard. Let's back off and let's take it easier. That's a thought process. Like is it a combination of all the above? What is state?
Yeah. Imagine there's something you want to achieve, and let's say you want to get on your first podcast, right? So maybe, or you start a podcast or whatever it is, for the listener that has some dream. And when you finally do that thing, when you finally get there and you make it to the red carpet or whatever, there's all these things. There's like how you're standing, how you're feeling, what are your thoughts, what are the emotions running through you, like who's around you, all of these things, which it's kind of like you can imagine a movie, right? See yourself in the future doing these things and having that experience. So if you can get really clear on all those things, how you're going to feel and the state you'll be in when you finally get the thing you wanted, then you can just bring it into the now, right? You can bring all of those aspects. You can start dressing like that person. You can have the mannerisms. You can feel the confidence, whatever it is, and just bring it into the now. And of course, it drifts away because like we have the patterns of being how we are. But if you can continually like
reinforce that, ingrain it,
then it enables you to do things like acquire the habits you need, or to go seek the opportunities that will lead eventually to the thing. So it kind of helps you with the doing things if you're already operating from that state where you've gotten what you want.
Yeah, I think that's that is you've just lifted the lid on basically an incredible way to manifest futures there for sure. And I find personally when I'm coaching others into that space, I find gratitude is like a massive hack in there, like being grateful for it, like it's already happened. Because some people go, I can't picture what that's even going to be like in the future, let alone try and suck it back into the now. And it's like, well, just imagine that it's happened and you're already grateful that it's happened. It's like, oh my God, I can be grateful that this is already my reality. I don't have to think about what it looks like. I can just be grateful for it. And it's like, yeah. And then it's like, oh, well, I'm grateful. And then it starts to unravel and we come back to, I think, that Dawkins scale that you were referring to before, with power versus force, and it becomes really potent. So I guess the next question has to be quantum business coaching. So there is so much in the background to coming from science, exploring spirituality, working with time well spent. What is what's at the heart of quantum business coaching, and why did this call you into? How did this become the Derek Loudermilk offering? How did why business coaching? Why is it so important? How did this come to be? Tell us a little bit more, mate.
Yeah, I see entrepreneurship and I've just been fascinated with entrepreneurship, just as a way of like bringing into the world something you're excited about. So for a while I was working on inventing products or different, I've had a dozen different businesses, and partly just to learn, how does something go from an idea to a physical reality, right? How do we like make something that's nebulous dense into a physical thing?
Yeah.
So an organization, a movement, whatever it might be.
Totally alchemical, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And so the sort of the main theme of quantum business coaching is working from infinite possibility, which is to say, you don't have to climb the ladder of success, or the right opportunities can come along and you can quickly bring about whatever it is in the world. And so there's a lot of things that get in the way of working from infinite possibility, which are, belief structures or access to resources or whatever that might be. So a lot of the coaching is around like getting rid of those hurdles, those barriers into working from infinite possibility. And then once you get to a place where you can work from infinite possibility, using tools and techniques that I've learned from my metaphysical experiments to really facilitate that process. So whether that's with lucid dreaming or sort of group manifestation, or using crystals to assist with that process, and just using a lot of different tools. Once you're operating from a framework of anything is possible, then you can start to use tools to facilitate that.
And then, so that helps us craft a vision that is most that is inspiring us. So here we're defining success on our own terms, and then we're also going out on a journey of harnessing, I guess, the metaphysical approaches to sort of actually draw and manifest things into our reality. And is that at the heart of the quantum business coaching experience? Or then do we go away and also, like, is there some nuts and bolts of putting your business together, or is it more about actually manifesting your real life through that quantum state?
Yeah. So in this coaching method that I've developed, there's the metaphysical aspect is one part of it. I want everyone to feel. There's this book that came out a long time ago, which is like the first business book I ever read, called The Personal MBA, which was great. It was like, here's everything you need to know about business. So an aspect of my coaching is the thought leaders MBA, which is, I work a lot with coaches and healers and spiritual teachers. So, and people that are changing the world by bringing in new ideas and healing the world and things like that. So, I want them to feel completely competent in any aspect of business, whether it's creating an offer or selling it, or the whole cycle of producing something and getting it out there and shipping and learning from it, and then creating the next version or whatever it might be, or building a team, hiring people, dealing with uncomfortable conflict within your team, whatever it might be, right? There's just so many sub skills in business. So business, metaphysics, adventure, from all my travels, and how to think like an adventurer, right? And to move towards risk, move towards discomfort, and train yourself to be like an adventurer. And then also from my days as a cyclist, bringing in peak performance, just really taking care of your body like you would as a pro athlete, to just really, if you can optimize your physical state and health and mental state and health, then it makes all these other endeavors much easier. So those are the four main aspects of the work I do.
I love it. And do you think, like you mentioned health there, do you think that's probably, I find, and I'm just wanting to see what your thought space is, that that's probably for business owners one of the most neglected sort of spaces, or what out of the four that you're talking about, these different pillars, the metaphysical, the health, like what do you find is usually, I know you probably...
Well, that's the fastest way to put the brakes on doing what you're doing. Like if something comes up, right, and anybody's gotten sick and had to cancel something, right? It's like whatever it might be. But if you're um, let's say someone tells you something you don't really like hearing, but it's maybe valuable feedback. If you're in a strong place, right? If you have maintained your personal power to a degree, then you can use that feedback positively. But if you're in a off balance or weakened state, or you've depleted yourself by worrying, or just by not getting enough sunlight or water or hugs or whatever it might be, right? Then that comes a place where you can get into a spiral, and it drops the anchor, and you spend days sorting yourself out of this abyss. So really it's about like just stopping all the leaks, all the places where you're leaking your energy, and so then you can just like, when all these, of course, because everyone's life is full of unknowns, but when these unknowns come at you, they just can roll off you, and you can stay in a state of peace if you have enough of this personal power, because you haven't been losing it.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about personal power and leaks before. Can you tell us a little bit more what you mean by, like I think you described a little bit there. It's like you have a trigger, and then you don't, like, you don't just there. Can you describe what a leak looks like in terms of power and personal power? Because I think it was really, you describe it really practically.
Yeah, this could be something like self-doubt. Could be, and you just get into doubting yourself, even though there might be good evidence that you're actually capable. This could be undervaluing yourself in some way, or it could be getting caught up in politics, or whatever's going on that you feel worried about. There's a lot of that going around, right? And so if you dip too much into that, then you open yourself up to get sucked into that. And we just had a friend stop by earlier today, and she was like, I spent 2 months, and I like woke up and finally realized that I had been too far down this rabbit hole, and I was depressed, and I was just like it was like the worst it's ever been, because there was some thing that she really cared about, and it but it wasn't going her way in our politics here in the US. And so she just she lost a lot of her personal power by something that she was barely able to influence.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, one of the things that's been really present for me recently is so maybe this comes down to parenting, and maybe you can test, but the distance between, a friend of mine, she put it like this: the distance between trigger and reaction. In that response, that space for the response is my power. And yeah, exactly how you just described it then, I loved it, because it's, you've been sitting on something for longer than you've needed to, and you haven't consciously chosen, a response, and, you've just been sort of reacting. And then in hindsight, you can look back and go, I was sucked up by something, it was like, what was I sucked up into? Or, it's not even like a person or an entity or anything. It's just, you just were not in your power to make conscious, robust decisions.
There's a phrase that just popped into my head, which is learning how to respond in ways you prefer to things that you don't prefer, which is like when situations arise that have the opportunity to knock you off your game, you respond from a place of how you hope you would.
Yeah, that for me, that is what the shiny fruit of resilience looks like. I feel like resilience is on this new, it's very attractive these days. And for me, that's kind of what I feel like what you've just described is what resilience is, right? It's like when you get knocked and you don't sort of recoil, it's like, well, I would sort of like to take that even with grace and respond with grace. But that takes some inner fortitude, some resourcing, right?
Yeah, when you see it done well, and people are heroes, right? When they can, especially when you see someone publicly like deal with it. Like I'm thinking in particular right now of Joe Rogan when he was like publicly apologizing for when people were trying to cancel him, right? And it was like you could see his process unfolding in the public eye. Yeah,
it's quite the process. Pardon me. So Derek, before I let you go, I've got a question. I love asking this question. Your vision for the future, for tomorrow, inspired evolution. What does an inspired evolution mean to you?
Yeah, there's, I've been thinking a lot about so the premise, a couple of premises that I'll start with here, which is we can't solve problems at the same level of consciousness they are created, which is an Einstein misquote, but a concept. So then looking around and seeing problems and then being like, okay, these arose because of the level we're at, right? War only arises out of people who go to war, right? And so what would it have to be like for these things not to arise, for greed, corporate greed to no longer exist, or environmental exploitation to no longer exist? What would it have to be like for us collectively to be operating in a place where that just didn't happen? That would mean that individually, there was nothing left within us that wanted to fight people or control people or enslave people or take without giving. And so whenever I see something that I don't like, a system that is like, ugh, then I know that there's something inside of me that I can perhaps heal. So it's great. Being a parent is such a great example, especially like with control. I was like, okay, I don't really like to think of mandates. So where am I mandating my kids? Like, where am I just being like, I'm bigger, and so you do it because I'm the person who knows better? And that was something that I had to look at a lot and sort of just appreciate and forgive and release within myself, so that I'm no longer operating from trying to control somebody else. And that, I believe, is like perhaps something we'll have to do, each of us individually in turn, and then there won't be any need for mandates anymore, just because like nobody's trying to control someone else, but rather it's a conversation about how can we best move forwards in a complex time, right?
I love that. I love that. I love how much of your work is dedicated to personal power. Derek, I could thank you so much for today's conversation, but I know it's, a whole body of work that you've spent, like you said, from all the different aspects of all the lives you've lived, even just in this lifetime, you've brought together to condense into all your offerings as well. So, and you've brought all of that with such richness here today. I want to thank you so much for your time, for doing this with us on behalf of myself and the Inspired Evolution brother, the audience here, wishing you the best on your way forward. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Amrit, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and if you want to stay in tune for new episodes launching every Monday, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay inspired to evolve.